Thank you very much. Every time I come to a Cambridge show, I never put our Blackbird presentation up. We work on it significantly, and what I thought is here we are, the oil company that comes to the Gold and Silver Show. What should I be talking about? Well, what I thought is I'd start talking about the oil sector on a general basis, where it's going, what's happened to us over the last 3 years, and where are we going. And now I'm not a commodity expert, but I will tell you is when you're running an oil company, and I also run a completions company, we monitor oil and gas prices pretty closely. One of the things that happened in 2014 is we saw a dramatic pullback in the oil price. What were some of those reasons? Saudi Arabia was very, very much feeling threatened by the resource sector within North America. As you guys would know, at the shale plays, they started to ramp up production to potentially kill our sector, where I'm in, the resource play. It didn't work. Innovation came in, and we actually counteracted it to reduce our costs. Other things that were happening was that growth in the world was starting to slow down, and we saw that world tensions, Iran was doing a settlement on nuclear basis. The world tensions within the world were starting to decline. And so actually there was no risk premium put to oil. And oil prices collapsed, but that was actually the best thing that could have happened to my company, because actually it allowed me to do a large-scale assembly of what I believe to be a very liquid-rich asset, and I was able to do that assembly at a time when other companies were pulling their capital budgets back. So in a time of depression in oil prices, it was a huge benefit to Blackbird Energy. Well, where are we now? Oil prices are starting to step up, and I'm not going to be here and tell you that the trend is that we're going to go back to $100. I actually think that you're going to see oil prices very much cradled right between maybe a $50 to $70 area for an extended period of time. And one of those reasons is that North America has become a major player in regards to oil and gas production, oil specifically, and it's beginning to create that area that it's going to be bridled in. Other things that are happening, the world is growing. Growth is at about 3.6%, Europe's back on track, and we're starting to see an increase. And tensions within the world, we've never seen this kind of tension between Saudi Arabia and Iran. There's a real potential that there could be a significant square-off. One of the things is that Saudi Arabia has moved forward with actually taking its largest company, Saudi Aramco, public. The Crown Prince feels that the company should be valued right around a $2 trillion valuation. A lot of analysts are out there saying it could be as low as $500 billion, up to 1.1. So the Crown Prince is pushing very much to support the industry to get this valuation. It's almost a referendum on the Crown Prince. One of the other things that's interesting is that Russia and Saudi Arabia are working very closely together. This is a rare event that you're actually getting this, that the Russians and the Saudis are working together to constrain oil price production so that they can push prices up. This is definitely going to favor Saudi Aramco. What we're seeing is that Saudi Arabia over the last 2 to 3 years has seen a 1/3 reduction in their foreign reserves. They need $70 a barrel to balance their budget. The way they're operating, they can't actually function for an extended period of time. And with the risk of potential major conflict with Iran, they need their budgets to be bolstered. Now, one thing the Crown Prince has just recently done is he's actually had a number of people arrested in his company and country. He's taken on a number of royals into custody. Over 400 people have been arrested. It looks like they're going to recover about $100 billion that they feel was defrauded from the country, but that's not going to make up their reserves. They need oil prices to get back up close $70 to balance their budget. When the Saudis curtail their supply to the marketplace, it has historically, from 2000 onward, had a major effect on the oil price. Each one of these is indicating, and you see the arrows where we're popping up, that's a curtailment where they've pulled back. The Saudis have moved. If you remember in 2014, they were producing at about 10.3 million barrels a day. They're right down at about 6.3 million. That's that curtailment that's going on right now. One of the other things that's interesting in Saudi Arabia is that we're expecting demand within their own economy to increase. Crown Prince has just authorized that women next year, it's kind of weird for us in North America, women are going to be allowed to drive next year in June. First off, there's going to be a lot more people driving on the road. I expect a lot more cars, but consumption is starting to increase in Saudi Arabia. This is what's happening. What I think this is a further floor, and in coordination with Russia, it's starting to push up and reduce supply. We're getting a supply-demand balance out. Stage completion. Blackbird owns actually 10% of Stage, and I'm proud to say that actually Stage just entered into a trial agreement with Saudi Aramco, and they're going to be rolling out our sleeves and completion system in January. It's the first time that they've allowed a company without a 7-year track history to come in and put their system into there. We're actually quoting on 4 different resource plays within Saudi Aramco. We're trying to displace coiled tubing in the marketplace, which Baker Hughes has in that marketplace. It's a $200 to $400 million contract a year for Baker Hughes. And what I'm also proud about is this, along with Saudi Aramco trying it, we just landed in the last 2 weeks the first super major. 533 sleeves are being sold to Statoil for the Eagle Ford. Those are just for 2 wells. We also have locked up Shell and Chevron for Canada for test trials on 2 major wells. And we have 30 master service agreements. And why I'm so proud about Stage, it is causing us to allow us to do higher intensity completions in our resource plays, and also substantially reducing our costs. So this company was developed out about 3.5, 4 years ago. We have now over 40 patents in this company, and Blackbird owns 10% of it and also gets preferential pricing and access to the system as it rolls out. And today, I can happily say at 6:33 this morning, we just completed 19 sleeves on one of our wells, and now we're going to plug and perf for the balance of it. This is basically indicating where global demand is going. We're at about 3.6%. I was on the phone with one of my friends from UBS in Europe, and he told me last week, he said, every 2 days in Asia, there's a billionaire being created. That's the growth going. I've been going over to Asia for over 30 years, and I've seen this society go from donkeys pulling carts to motorbikes to cars to full infrastructure, and it is astounding, that growth. And one of the things I'll say is growth creates consumption. And one of the interesting things I think in China, which I find so interesting, here's a population of 1.3 billion people. This is actually a Chinese highway. I remember getting on one of those highways about 18 years ago, and there were literally donkey carts on the far right-hand side. And today, it actually often in those areas out of Shanghai, Beijing, are like this. And it's interesting is that correlation. Right now, there's 100 million cars in China. But if it was correlated to the United States, it would actually be closer to 1 billion vehicles. What I can tell you is that the Eastern Asian areas are demanding growth. They actually are looking at us in North America and Europe and wanting the lifestyle we want. They have that. They want the single family house. They want the car in the garage. And that growth is demanding more oil. One of the things I did was about a year ago, people were talking about how renewable energies were going to take over and it was going to displace oil. Well, I'll tell you, here's a few interesting facts. By 2035, cars will grow by over 82%. Trucks, which is huge, are going to grow by 110%. Air transportation is going to grow by 120%. One of the interesting factors, 40% of the oil's world consumption comes from trucks. Now, I saw Elon Musk. Who saw Elon Musk's new vehicle rollout? Absolutely snazzy. Snazzy looking vehicle. Costs $600,000. Now, if you didn't know what a diesel would cost, you would say, well, that's pretty expensive. A deal costs about $135,000. This is Canadian dollars. So the differential is $135,000 to $600,000.
How much is the battery weight?
I don't know. I don't know what that weight is, but it's interesting. Definitely we're going to go to electric. Electric's coming. But in the interim, what I'm talking about is what do we have for demand in regards to what we're producing in oil? There's substantial demand. And what we're actually seeing, and this is OPEC, so you got to trust OPEC, right? OPEC saying we're in a balanced market going forward here. If we get any kind of serious political, you probably are going to get a bigger risk premium, but we're now heading into a balanced market. What you saw prior when we had oil trading well above 100 was an undersupplied market. Then we went into an oversupplied. Now we're heading back into a balanced market. Got to talk about lithium for a bit here. This is our transition fuel. But one of the interesting things when I looked at lithium, I saw is we're in an equilibrium right now. But where will we be in 2030, 2040? is as this demand increases, of course new lithium mines are going to come on, but the amount of demand that's coming into place is potentially going to put it into a disequilibrium, and you can expect that prices will appreciate on lithium as well, further imposing greater costs to the user of that product. Not to speak against it, it's coming, and anybody that would be thinking ahead knows electric vehicles are going to show up in our marketplace in a substantial way. It's just what kind of burden on society are we willing to accept? Well, it's San Francisco. This was one of the guys that I actually loved on the business modeling and how his foresight was. And I asked Steve, what do you think? Investing in the oil and gas sector, where would you go? And I believe he would have thought Alberta condensate. And you'd say, why are you talking about condensate? Here we are in the United States. There's one product that we produce in Canada that we have a competitive advantage over America. It's condensate. We sell condensate in Alberta for WTI, West Texas Intermediate. We get the US dollar on it, which we love the US dollar. And we get a premium, sometimes up to 24%. And this red line is depicting where we're selling our condensate, and that's in Canadian dollars, but it's on a premium to WTI. Western Canadian Select, which is our oil, right in that 35 area gravity weight, trades at about a $12 to $14 discount to WTI, and then in Canadian dollars. So today, oil's trading at about 55.64. You take $14 off that, you're in the 41.64 Canadian. Well, what are the yields back? The better netbacks are for companies that are producing condensate. Well, what's the need for condensate? Heavy oil development in Canada, $290 billion has been spent to implement heavy oil coming in. That's been put in the ground to develop our heavy oil industry. That growth is forecast to increase by another 1.3 million barrels a day. And one of the things, I don't know if you guys saw it today, hallelujah. TransCanada, Keystone Pipeline, come on guys, you got to be, we got a major infrastructure project approved, and that's incredible because we have a hard time getting approved in Canada. You guys just approved today in Nebraska the Keystone Pipeline. 830,000 barrels are going to go through. This is in 2020. This is a $10 billion project. Another bump for all of our economies, putting people to work, but more importantly, bringing that heavier oil mixed with condensate. That's what we need that condensate for, to mix with the heavy oil so it can be transported through the line. Well, where are we going? What's the need? What's the demand? And I like that lithium chart because you saw that we're forecasting lithium could be getting more expensive as we get that disequilibrium. Well, right now in Alberta, right now, we're undersupplied by condensate 350 to 400,000 barrels a day. Every single day, we need about 600,000 barrels. Where we bring it from is from Texas. So we ship it up from the Eagle Ford, and we bring it up. And by the way, Eagle Ford is actually increasing its production dramatically. The Stat Oil sale was for the wells in the Eagle Ford. We also have Murphy Oil and Gas is using our system in the Eagle Ford. It is to do higher intensity completions to extract greater amount of condensate. And guess what? Number one premium market actually is Venezuela and Canada. And that's where they ship it out to. But what we're seeing is we're seeing this increase. By the time we're on in 2020, 2021, we're seeing that spread go to 800,000 barrels. Now our government, back in 2016, recognized we weren't drilling enough for condensate, and they actually used to tax on a royalty basis between 23 to 30% royalty on condensate wells. And in 2015, 16, they looked at this and said, we've got to change this to encourage oil and gas companies to drill for condensate. So they reduced the royalty for us to 5%. So capital said, boy, this is getting good, less tax. We got to start focusing on where should we go. People were looking to try to find liquid-rich condensate plays. Now, this happens to be a company I'm a big fan of, Encana. Encana used to be the largest natural gas producer in all of North America. And then they recognized, well, gas is good, but liquids are better. And they're the number one producer in the Montney. And they have three very significant projects that produce a lot of condensate. Tower, Dawson, and then their number one, Pipestone. And all of you can see that. I made that in red for you. 825 barrels per day coming out of wells in the Pipestone area. And Blackbird is right beside them. And Canada's up in the blue. Their most liquid-rich areas are just above their name, right there. And then Blackbird sits there with 132 sections of land. This is the most liquid-rich corridor possibly in all of the Montney. And Canada talks about it as it's a world-class asset, and it is their #1 liquids play, and they're right beside us. And by the way, I just finished drilling a well right up on the left-hand side of my land up there. Marin Katusa is coming up on December 7th with a number of institutions from all over the world, Europe, United States, Canada, and a number of analysts. We're going to have 35 people at our site December 7th to come and watch a stage completion on that well. What's interesting, consolidation is happening. A little company right down on the bottom, Paramount, it's not so little, it's a very significantly and well-run company by the Riddells, just purchased 72 sections of land. They paid $7.1 million per section, or $1.2 billion for that land mass. Again, so I'll repeat, Blackbird has 132 sections. It is adjacent to my land, just to the south. Shell just increased their position dramatically and doubled their land position, now right into Blackbird. NuVista bought 11 sections just to the west of us. That NuVista is basically saying on those 11 sections, we can create 10,000 BOE on 11 sections for 10 years, which I think is going to be about $1 billion asset for expending about $90 million. They paid $3.5 million per section for those 11 sections back in 2014. So the points I'll make is, #1, increase in activity in our corridor is dramatic. When I started assembling this land, there were 20 Montney wells here. Now there's over 300. Shell's just licensed another 60 just to the south of us. Paramount states that they're going to increase their production here dramatically. They've actually just contracted 7 rigs to drill full-time to the south of us. So the activity's increasing. In this area, right here, $4 to $5 billion is getting spent on infrastructure, sour processing facilities or gas processing facilities, pipelines, gathering systems, all in this area. This is the most active area in Canada outside of the oil sands. What are they focusing on? Condensate. That's what the main key is. And we're right in the middle of it. One of the things when you're developing an oil company, it is this transition to becoming an intermediate. One of the most critical steps is signing gas handling agreements. I've been working on gas handling agreements for 18 months, and I was looking for a couple things. #1, I wanted to own the facility, which it would enhance Blackbird's value dramatically. I wanted it to be a low-cost situation, that Blackbird would be one of the lowest-cost producers in the corridor, and it needed to be near proximity so that my costs would be reasonable. I entered into an agreement and just announced it a little over a week and a half ago, Tidewater. This is another local Grand Prairie company like I am. And we will now with this start with 20 million feet, moving to 30 million feet. We'll start production in Q2 2019. And this makes us one of the lowest cost producers with ownership in the facility. Now this isn't where I'm going to stop at 30 million feet. This is phase 1 of this facility. It's a 100 million a day facility. They'll double it, but with ownership, I can increase my size with it. And this is really unique, is it is in such close proximity to my lands that my transportation and compression is substantially low. This is an absolutely exceptional deal for Blackbird. Where are we? I did this up a little while ago. I call it the value curve. As we move through a company's life cycle, you actually do a number of things. One of them is you go through, 3 years ago, I was in land assembly. I would have been at 8 sections moving up. And as you move up in size, it gets actually challenging because as you get bigger, people are starting to focus on it. But I had a land strategy that would basically capture land, make it inefficient for other people to come in and buy, and that was allowed me to assemble. By the way, with Paramount, they paid $7.1 million a section. I've assembled my 132 sections for $20 million. Next thing we did was we moved our drilling costs and drilling times down dramatically. We used to drill and complete wells for about $10 million. We're now doing this for $5.5 to $6 million and much, much, much higher intensity completions. #3, this year we actually did the largest financing on the TSX Ventures history. We raised $84.5 million. By the way, Blackbird has no debt. Typically, when companies move to become an intermediate, they're laden with a lot of debt, usually an RBL or a reserve-based lending facility. We have none of that. We signed our gas handling agreement. We actually implemented testing and delineation of our resource. We've drilled and completed 11 wells and 12th well to be completed on December 7th. So substantial delineation of our asset. We're very confident in our resource. That's why we entered the preceding gas handling agreement. And the most important thing is you're going to see Blackbird move from a 1,600 to 2,000 BOE company in 2019, hopefully moving up to a 10 to 15,000 BOE company. And that's just our first step. That's a substantial move. So over the next little while, you're going to actually see Blackbird roll out another 2 rigs, 1 rig, and we're going to be drilling up next year probably between 8 to 12 wells, probably 35 wells in the next 2 years. Thank you very much, and I'll just point out that again, consolidation is happening in our corridor, as you've seen with Shell and Paramount, so we're in a very, very unique position. Any questions? I'm going to be at the booth as well for people that have questions, so anyone who wants to come and chat with me at the booth, that's great.